we'll get straight into the juice of it, basically, because this is the one that everyone talks about, that Tom even mentioned at the start, and that is inflammation. So it seems to be the big one in terms of this supplement. There are a few small papers out there which do suggest a benefit, but I did find 2 large papers. So here we go. I've got one called Joint Arthritis, a systematic review and meta-analysis of randomised clinical trials. And they basically suggested that the randomised controlled trials out there provide scientific evidence that supports the efficacy of turmeric extract about 1,000 milligrams a day. So bear that number in mind when you compare it to the 2 products I mentioned earlier, which was one was 1,750, one was 750. So that's 1,000 milligrams a day in the treatment of arthritis. So that's obviously a very specific population of people there. So you can't assume because it's worked for those guys, or it's had not worked, but it's had a suggested benefit for people with arthritis, that because you feel like you're a bit inflamed, that it's suddenly going to do wonders for you. That's not the case. But that's obviously a promising paper there. However, the total number of randomised controlled trials, including the analysis, the total sample size and the methodological quality of the primary studies were not sufficient to draw definitive conclusions. And this was from 2016. So even though I just said there's a bit of promise, if we look a bit deeper and look at some of the limitations of that paper, they can't be conclusive, which is never a great thing, if I'm being honest. If we fast forward to 2019, we have another one. So, oral turmeric / curcumin effects on inflammatory markers in chronic inflammatory diseases. So once again, very specific to a certain population of people who have chronic inflammatory diseases. A systematic review and meta-analysis of RCTs again. They found no significant effects on inflammatory markers. So, from that point of view, from those 2 papers there, we have got another one after this, don't worry. I'm absolutely throwing papers at my arse today. But from the 2016 one, bit of promise on arthritis, but wasn't conclusive. We then get another one in 2019, which is more up to date. They found, no significant effects. Nothing significant. If it says no significant effects, that means I'm not spending £2.21 on a shot, essentially. But then if we fast forward again, fucking here we go. We're in 2020 now. We're flying through the years. So 2020, there were 32 trials. That was 2,038 participants, which were included, and 28 were meta-analysed. So I'll read a little extract here for you. So a total of 2,038 participants were included in the reviewed studies, and the majority of participants had some form of inflammatory condition. Only 6.7% of the participants were healthy with no diagnosed condition. That was 3 studies. Just over half of the studies, so that was 17 of 32, were conducted in Iran. Followed by the United States, there was 4 papers. Australia, there was 3. India, there was 3. China, there was 2. And then 1 each in Italy, Germany, and Japan. And then the curcumin, or turmeric, was delivered via capsules or tablets in all of the studies. And the doses ranged from 46 milligrams all the way up to 4,275 milligrams a day. And most of the studies used a formulated version. So 22 of them used a formulated version of curcumin, which we said is essentially the superior version, if you're going to look at it from a benefit point of view, absorption point of view, sorry. So if we just put aside all that word salad I just said, you might have to listen to it a few times to make any sense of it. It's a lot of shit. Basically, it's the latest paper. It's quite up to date. And basically what they found was there was an improvement shown in reducing inflammatory markers. And as to be expected, it was more so in the formulated variety opposed to the unformulated variety. However, they did conclude, so don't get too excited yet, that however, curcumin is not yet considered a sports supplement with level A evidence. So the evidence is not super strong, essentially. Therefore, more studies are still needed to confirm the results and establish a safe and effective dose of supplementation.
So there is a reason why they haven't given it a Class A yet. And one of those reasons being is that, so if we kind of just quickly go over what we just said there, things like inflammation, like which links with things like osteoarthritis and pain, we compile all that together. One, we've spoken about this quite a few times actually, when it comes to pain, it's very difficult to gauge officially. It's very hard to gauge. But also in regards to pain in particular, some of the studies that were included there were conflicts of interest.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't remember the name of the company, but one I read earlier on, one of the studies was funded by a herbal product company. So there's reasons like this where it's almost like it's possibly been tampered with. Mm-hmm. I would always urge on the side of caution, say, yeah, look, I'm happy to kind of discard if there's like a study if there's a very, very obvious bias here. Not all the time, but if it's a very obvious bias, then yeah, I'm willing to kind of push over to the side. I mean, in the fins, I saw it was a lot of this evidence was showing like, look, there was a noticeable decrease in things like pain, inflammation, etc. But the methodology was quite low quality evidence. So I'm happy to kind of see more research get pulled into this, but just high quality like methodology, evidence, and obviously no conflicts of interest.
And it needs to be, Tom, because if we go back to the start there, 2016, 2019, 2020, all three have kind of come to a similar conclusion almost. Like a potential for effect, but we need more. We need more. Which
is weird because that's kind of around the time that I was getting into the whole turmeric thing. Yeah, it shows you that my science brushing up on my science skills wasn't all there yet.
If you just read the abstract, or if you read the abstract of maybe one of these papers, you'd be like, suggested benefit. You'd be like, a benefit. All right, I'm in. Game on. Let's go.
Oh yeah, I was just an abstract guy. That's all I was. But so kind of quickly, just while we're touching on this subject of things like pain, arthritis, inflammation, my mum suffers from terrible arthritis, and that's why she was one of the people where I was saying to her, look, kind of get on this turmeric, I've read so much about it, etc. And she really bought into it, and she generally believed it makes like a massive difference. And perhaps on a biological level it actually is, but now obviously with what I know about pain, etc., perhaps there's the buyer's bias,
but
perhaps
I'll be honest with you, Tom,
effect.
That's still a good thing, because if she's finding improvement, you can't take that away from her,
well, this is the thing. Who's to say, well, what's the problem with that? This is where I err on the side of caution now. It's because, one, money, and not only that, but you then start focusing all your attention onto this one thing that is actually not
doing anything,
low maintenance as you think. Because suddenly, if the shop runs out of stock, for whatever reason it was, my mum's supply stopped short, and suddenly she was unable to get these things. Suddenly she was in awful, horrific pain, etc. Now, is it because she stopped taking it? Or is it because of the thought that she no longer had this magic potion? I feel like I'm throwing my mum under the bus here. Sorry, mum. I love you, mum. But no, I mean, I'm just going to link her to this afterwards, and then she could belt me later.
What?
But yeah, I mean...
You're not 50 years old, so.
Right. Yeah, as I said, mate, she ain't had a turmeric. I'll be fine. But yeah, do you see what I mean? Like, we can become over-reliant on certain things. How many times have we said this in regards to, our rituals, our toolkits, our supplements? We become over-reliant on something, and then we get that nocibic effect where we think, oh shit, I've not got my magic supplement, I'm bound to... Suddenly you're expecting to be in pain, so you will be. And the amount of times I've kind of said to her, look, I think it'd be more meaningful if you actually do these exercises that I've got here for you. It could be something as simple as like sitting down, standing back up. So you're doing box squats pretty much. But it's like, oh, I can't. Without my turmeric, I simply can't. Do you see where my issue comes in now? So that's why I err on the side of caution about getting people hooked onto things. As like it's a side aid, where it's like, look, this is just something that might aid you, but that's it. It's just an aid. It's not the be-all, end-all. That's where I would err on the side of caution.
Yeah.
So I'm not against turmeric. It's just be careful in the messages we give behind it. Because when I originally did it, I said it was like the magic bullet.